as little as this piece of furniture is, it was actually one of my harder pieces that I have refinished. It gave me a run for my money or patience. I quit working on this multiple times. It took me months, but I have it done and I want to show you how it turned out. I'm Sarah. I've been flipping furniture and have redone a few rooms in my house, but I have so many projects I want to learn how to do. I'm usually figuring things out as I go and learn from a lot of mistakes, but I'm so excited to see all these ideas I have come to life and to get to share them with you. So, welcome to my channel. Aside from this being dirty and needing a really good cleaning, I want to point out to you some of the things that need addressed. So the top needs completely resanded. The finish has been gunked up by something. Who knows what that was? It is really dusty, but that stuff should come off with a good cleaner. So I'm not too concerned about this at this point. But wait and see. One of the foot caps is missing, so I did have to scour eBay and find a close enough match. Then this top has been ripped off, so this support wood underneath is no good. I'll need to replace that, and then the little corners that help hold that on. So I started off cleaning everything with soap and water, and it was pretty messy. It has sat in my basement for I don't know how many years. But I decided that wasn't working, and I took the hose to it, which I try to never do. I do not like doing this because it takes forever for wood to dry, in my opinion, once you've soaked it with a hose. I did it in my kitchen cupboards, and they shrank after painting them, and it looks terrible. So I do not like doing this. But this was hard to clean, and as I cleaned it more, it got this like green film on it. So I scrubbed it harder, thinking, I don't even know what this is. You can see on the legs, it's like a green slime. I have never seen this on a piece. Granted, I have not refinished very many antiques. So I will tell you later what I found out, but after I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed with a toothbrush, with a rag, with a scouring pad, I eventually got it to a point where it was mostly clean. You can see on the leg here, it looks pretty good. It dried off. I did need to take all the caps off because in refinishing this, I needed to just make sure everything was good. And one of the feet or two of the feet were actually broken. So those will need patched as we go. After it was dry, I'm trying to sand it because I'm trying to decide, can I refinish this or does it need painted? Something inside of me is just, it's painful for me to see people paint antiques, especially if it's solid wood. I feel like wood should let its beauty shine and not hidden in paint in general. But as I worked on this piece, all the little intricate details just is intimidating to me. I don't know if I was a more detailed person, I would just love all the little nooks and crannies and sanding. But let me tell you what, despite myself, I spent so much time sanding. I did this over multiple days. I would sand a little, and I'm like, oh, it's a little boring. I'll come back to it. At this point, I took a break, and I'm like, okay, let me see some progress. So I took 120 grit sandpaper to this and got the finish knocked off and all the stain. This is just my first rough sanding, but this is satisfying. It's like, okay, we're making progress. The top looks good. As I sand, I kind of assess, is this something I can restain or is it going to look terrible and blotchy? But this is looking really good and really promising. To do all the edges, I just needed to sand it all by hand. So I sanded the entire edges, 120 grit sandpaper. Okay, so now it's a different day. I'm wearing different clothes. I'm coming back and sanding again. And that gunky stuff, I had the hardest time getting clean and smooth. Like, it just felt tacky. And this is a different day. I came back. I'm telling you, this piece had so much sanding. To finish this top, though, I did the 120 grit sandpaper to knock everything off. And then I come back in with a 180. And once I get a complete sanding of the 180, I go in with a 220 grit. And that gives my final smoothness before I'm ready to refinish this. So getting all of that done, that took care of the top. As I was sanding the base of it, there were some pieces where the veneer was coming off. So I'm gluing that back down, which, realizing that this is a veneer and not solid wood, which kind of makes sense, I guess. I'm questioning whether I can sand this and stain it. I did knock these support pieces off so that I could clean it up and just restart it over. When I put the top on, I'll reattach those. Taking these screws out because they should not be in there without that support wood piece. That's where they ripped out. So I'm filling those holes so that I can put those screws back in. I didn't want to change out the screws and everything so that I could use everything that was already there to make things easy on me. So after filling both of these holes with just some pieces of skewer and wood glue and let that dry, I'll then be able to put those back in. So this support piece, I debated whether I could salvage it, but it's too damaged. I can't get a clean finish. So I had to go to the hardware store and get a fresh board. And of course, I feel like any of these antiques I worked on, they don't sell wood the same width that they made back whenever this piece was made. So my board is wider because I would either go wider or skinnier. And I figured more support is better than less. So after I got that cut to length and just double check that fits, I needed to figure out how to make those corner angle pieces for extra support. And this made me nervous because my hand was closer than I would like, but not too close. And I had to wrap my brain around how to make these triangles. And I was like, oh yeah, I can put my saw at an angle and get my angle cuts and make these little pieces. And sure enough, they looked matched up close enough to the ones that were already on there. So, got that checked off. It was a little stressful. I don't like my hands being close to the saw blade at all. But I just took some rough grit sandpaper and smoothed out those corners and edges so that they would lay nicely up against the wood. One of the toes had a piece chip off when I pulled the foot cover off of it, and I needed to glue that back on, and I taped it down with painter's tape to hold it in because that's a really awkward spot to try to clamp. Now, I'm showing this. It's kind of embarrassing, but just to show that sometimes we have ideas and we think they're going to work, but they don't. I've seen people try to rebuild a molding on a piece of furniture by copying a current piece of the molding with hot glue so that you can remake it. And I think that works on a flat surface, but when I'm trying to rebuild a toe, which, side note, I cleaned the oil off after all that cleaning. Of course, I'm going to clean it off. Anyway, made sure my little cap worked because I'm trying to rebuild the toe here. But I think when you're doing that, it needs to be on a flat surface because once I put that cap form that I made on, the Bondo that I'm using just stuck to the cap. So that didn't work at all. And really something that's open like this, I can just take Bondo and scrape it on, and then between the putty knife and my fingers, because it dries pretty quickly, I can shape it and hold it while it dries, and it's a good enough shape that will be fairly easy to sand down. So this is what worked. Doing the hot glue idea, making a mold with the hot glue did not work, but I'm just sharing that to say I still learn as I go, and we try things, and it didn't cause any harm, and it didn't work. So there were 2 feet that I had to fix with the Bondo, and just sanded them down with my 180 grit sandpaper and made sure that it felt nice and smooth. These will be covered with the caps because I'm putting them back on, which if they weren't broken, I would consider not putting them on, but it's okay. I found one on eBay that looked really close, and I just wanted to make sure that they fit. So some of those veneer pieces that I was patching broke, and I needed to fill them with wood filler, and there were a couple spots. And at this point, because of the wood filler, I thought, and the pain that it's been to stain, I don't want to stain. I'm going to paint the piece. But I definitely am staining the top because it is fabulous wood. I love this dark, warm wood color. So I'm using a pre-stain. I feel like that does help a stain go on, and then I let that set for, I think it says to let it sit for at least 15 minutes on the can. I also put some pre-stain on the little support piece. It's going to be underneath, but it'll still be visible, so I am going to stain it. I somehow did not film myself staining this in the right angle, so here it is in a short feed type angle, but I used an Early American by Varathane. It's kind of, I think, a gel stain-ish mix. It did fabulous. I love this color. Look how gorgeous that turned out. Like, just take a minute and look. It looks so good. So I use a polyacrylic top coat. I like the water-based one. Apparently, supposedly, it does not orange as it ages, whereas the oil-based ones can. The wipe-on polys are oil-based. So I use this, the brush on. I have found that these Dollar Tree foam brushes work well for me. I think the fewer strokes you do, the best, but at the same time, I feel like it needs more leveling, so I go over it multiple times, but my finishes, I think, turn out good enough. I like them. They feel very smooth. They feel very clean, so I will keep doing this. I have seen other people say to use a paintbrush and dip it in mineral spirits before dipping it into your poly, but then you have to pour your poly into a separate container, and I just like things streamlined, and I get a foam brush and I dip it right into my can. That's probably not ideal, but that's what I like doing. So once I have one coat of poly, I let it sit for a day. I come in with a high grit, 220 grit sandpaper and do a light sanding. I think I've been doing too much of a sanding. Some of my scuffs are a little intense, but you get the bubbles and any imperfections out, and then come back in with my poly again, and I do this multiple times, 3 coats minimum. Sometimes I'll go 4 or 5 until I feel like the top coat has a nice finish, there's no bare spots, everything is nice and smooth, and I feel like it's thick enough that it'll be durable. I also did not film staining the little support piece underneath, but I did put, I believe, just 1 coat of poly on top of that to seal it. It will be seen, but it won't get a lot of wear. I sanded down the little spots that I patched, and at this point, it still felt sticky. So I came back and tried cleaning again. I cleaned the whole piece very thoroughly with a toothbrush, with a degreaser, trying to get all the sticky, I cleaned, and then I came back with a bucket of water and a rag to rinse it off so that all of the cleaning solution was off the piece. At this point, I'm like, great, I'm ready. We're gonna paint it. I can't stain it. And I test it, and I'm like, this is wobbly. I can't put a top on this. It's wobbly, and if I paint it, it'll mess it up. So let me tell you, oh my gosh. Okay, so this is where we dig in. So, oh my. I took it apart, and I took the screws off the bottom to the middle piece, and there were 3 parts. After getting all the pieces apart, I thought I can just glue it back together. So that'll hold it enough. So I put wood glue on the parts, screw them back together, the middle parts, and then the top part to the base. I glued that all back together, screwed it all back together, and then I set it up on the table and tested it, and I thought, no, it is loose because the screws are stripped. They were kind of spinning at one point. So I took it all apart again, and like I did before, I filled every hole with these skewer pegs and glued them back in and had to let that sit and wait. And at this point, I'm like, it's fine. This is something that's fixable. I did have to sand all the glue off that I had just put on there. And I don't think it was originally glued together. There wasn't really glue residue. So in putting it back together, I drilled the pilot holes exactly where the holes were before. I'm just trying to put it right back together as it was, which is kind of challenging to screw holes right where you filled the hole. So I got the middle 2 pieces together and then had to put the middle pieces onto the bottom. And once I got that all together, this stuff takes a lot for my brain to work and figure out, because I want to make sure that it's level, that it's fit, it looks right to the eye and it's not wonky or crooked. And if I put all this work into it, I want it to hold. I don't want it to be wobbly. So that held. It was strong then, and so I'm ready to paint. I'm priming and painting, and after the paint dried, this is a good primer. It was sticky. It was still sticky. The primer didn't stick in spots, and this is where I set it aside for a while, and I was like, I'm gonna come back to this because I can't. I have put so much work into it. When you're refinishing a piece, if you're gonna sell it, you have to take in mind how much time it takes to flip it, because you don't really want to be earning $2 an hour because you spent so much time and you're only going to get so much out of a piece like this. So I gave up on sanding it down. I got the sticky spots gone as best as I could, and I decided I'm going to come in with shellac and just coat it all. We're going to seal it in. I asked for people's opinion in a furniture flipping group, and someone said on antique pieces they often would use oils and such to make the wood all nice and pretty as a top coat. And so it could be I just did not get enough oils off. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? We're going to paint it. And this is going to be painted. Antiques look great painted, but a part of me cringes because I am so sad to cover up that wood. But at this point, I throw it out because I'm not going to put more time into it. I absolutely not was I going to put more time into priming or sanding and getting this thing smooth and getting all. Absolutely not. It was not worth my time. So the paint job on this is probably the worst paint job I have ever done on at least a furniture piece since I've been doing this more seriously. I'm sure as a child I had pieces something that I painted that's worse than this, but it was like lumpy. I can show you in the final reveal, but it was not smooth. It was not my finest piece. At this point, I'm not even sure I'll try to sell it because I don't know, but it still needs put back together. So the way I mark that this base piece is I just took the piece that I originally had and shoved the screws through the hole really hard so it marked the spots. I'm measuring with a ruler to make sure that it looks like, it's centered, it looks good, and I was satisfied with it. So those are ready. I did take a minute and put the caps on each of the feet, as I figured putting these on with the tabletop attached would be really awkward. So I got all 4 of those feet put on with 2 little nails to hold them in place. And if you didn't know, if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't know that one of these feet was not matching. And I'll try to show them all in the final reveal so you can see if you can pick out which one. One of these things just doesn't belong here, although it does. It's just slightly different. But anyway, once I got those feet on, we're ready to attach this tabletop with this connector piece, which I had to drill 6 holes, pilot holes, before we're ready to attach it. So this piece needs 2 holes for attaching it to the frame, and that will happen first. And then I can come up from the underside and attach with 4 screws this to the top. And I'm making sure that everything is lined up, marking all my spots before I drill any holes, because while I do have extra wood, if I screwed this up and had to start over, fill any more holes, or stain a new piece of wood, I would really have a hard time finishing this piece. So I took my good old time to very carefully measure and drill these holes because I did not want to do it again. Now, with the 4 holes going into the bottom side of the tabletop, to make the screws disappear after drilling my pilot holes, I came in with a larger drill bit and just did a very shallow drill right over top of the hole so that it was like those fancy bits that will drill the space for the screw head out for you. I just don't have that fancy drill bit. So I just need a second one and we can get the same effect. So I'm drilling in the pilot holes in my stand. In the second hole, I'm watching this. I'm like, oh, it looks like it's at an angle, but it went in fine. So it's okay. But seeing things from a different angle is like, oh, did I do that right? But it's fine. It went in, it held strong, it worked. So I got this little frame piece attached to the base, and then I took painstaking amounts of time to measure and measure and measure. And I'm just going to skip through a bunch because you don't need to see how much time it took. So drilled very shallow pilot holes in the tabletop and then was able to screw and attach the base on. With those 4 screws sunk in, the last step is these little corner anchors to help stabilize the top. I'm gluing them on with wood glue and securing them with painter's tape. I'm also going to weigh them down to help hold that tight. And we're going to look at where we started, and then I'll go into the final reveal. I'll point out in the final reveal areas where the paint just is not how I would like it, but this was the best I could do with my attention span. I hope you enjoy it, and stick around to the end. I have some videos I recommend if you like watching videos like this. But thanks for watching. I'll catch you at the end and in the next video. Until next time.